David hummed a quiet tune as he stacked a mountain of sparkling plates. His hands, though rough from soap and hot water, moved with a gentle rhythm. In his early 30s, with a kind smile that rarely left his face, David was a dad first and foremost. He worked as a dishwasher at the Gilded Spoon, a very fancy restaurant where important people ate. Years ago, David had loved to cook, creating delicious meals for his family. He'd even dreamed of being a chef. But life took a different path, and now he was simply kitchen help, a title that felt small and unimportant. He often watched the busy chefs, their crisp white coats a stark contrast to his faded apron. He saw the fire in their eyes, the passion in their movements, and a little piece of his old dream would ache inside him. But he pushed it down. His job was to make sure the dishes were clean, nothing more. He was just David, the dishwasher dad. The clatter of pots and pans often filled David's workday, but louder still were the sharp words from the head chefs. They were kings and queens in their kitchen, their talent sparkling like the silver forks they used. Among them was Chef Anya, a woman with bright, smart eyes and hair pulled back in a perfect bun. She was very good at cooking, and everyone knew it, but sometimes her words could be sharp like her knives. "David, hurry with those pots," she'd call, not looking at him, her voice a little cold. "We need them for real cooking, not just for, well, whatever it is you do back there." The other chefs would sometimes chuckle. They saw David as someone who just cleaned, not someone who once loved to create food. To them, he was just kitchen help, a silent part of the background. David would nod, his smile not quite reaching his eyes, and quietly go back to his work. He learned to keep his head down and his dreams tucked far away. It was easier that way. Even with the sharp words of Chef Anya echoing in his ears, David found comfort in his thoughts. His mind often drifted to Lily, his dear wife. She was like sunshine, always bright and warm, and she had a special magic in the kitchen. Lily loved to cook, turning simple ingredients into amazing meals that made everyone smile. Her laughter, mixed with the sizzle of the pan, was music to David's ears. He missed her terribly. Sometimes, when he saw a certain spice or a fresh vegetable, he would remember one of her special recipes. There was her famous chicken stew, rich and hearty, perfect for a cold day. Or her sweet apple tart, with a crust so flaky it melted in your mouth. These memories were like warm blankets on a cold night, keeping Lily close. He carried her recipes not on paper, but in his heart, each one a precious reminder of her love and her joy. They were his secret treasures, tucked away from the busy, mocking world of the Gilded Spoon. The air in the Gilded Spoon hummed with a different kind of energy that evening. Tonight was a very important banquet, a big event for special guests. The kitchen was a whirlwind of activity. Chefs shouted orders, pans clanged, and the smell of fancy food filled every corner. Everyone looked stressed, their faces tight with worry. Chef Anya moved like a swift bird, her eyes sharp, making sure everything was perfect. David, hidden away in his corner by the noisy dishwashing machine, felt the tension too. He washed plates and glasses, making them shine, doing his part for the big night. But a wave of sadness washed over him. He thought of Lily, who would have loved the excitement, who would have cooked something amazing for such a night. He imagined her happy smile, her apron dusted with flour. He missed her warmth, her laughter, her simple joy. In the middle of all the kitchen chaos, David felt a quiet ache in his heart, a gentle longing for a past that was no more. He was just a shadow in the busy kitchen, doing his job, feeling small and a little bit alone. The banquet was about to begin. The fancy dining room buzzed with important guests. In the kitchen, the heat and pressure were at their peak. David was scrubbing a large roasting pan when a terrible shout cut through the noise. "No, it's ruined." Chef Anya's voice, usually so strong, was filled with panic. Everyone stopped. A hush fell over the busy kitchen. Chef Anya stood before a huge tray, her face pale. The grand main dish, meant for all the special guests, was burned. Black, crisp, and completely ruined. A gasp went through the room. The other chefs rushed over, their faces turning from worry to pure horror. They poked at the charred food, shaking their heads. "What do we do?" one chef cried. "There's no time to start over," another wailed. Panic spread like wildfire. The banquet was minutes away, and the main course was gone. The kitchen, usually so proud and organized, was now a place of fear and confusion. David watched from his corner, his heart thumping. The kitchen was a mess of worried faces and frantic whispers. No one had a plan. David watched them, his heart still beating fast. He saw Chef Anya, usually so sure of herself, looking lost. Then a quiet voice cut through the panic. "I can help." Everyone turned. It was David, standing a little straighter than usual, his hands no longer covered in soapy water. Chef Anya looked at him, her eyes wide with surprise. "You?" she asked, a hint of disbelief in her voice. David nodded. "My wife, Lily, had a special recipe. It's warm and comforting, and I think I can make enough for everyone. It won't take too long." He spoke with a calm certainty that surprised even himself. The words, "my wife, Lily," felt like a brave whisper in the loud, fearful kitchen. He wasn't just a dishwasher anymore. He was a man with a secret strength, a memory of love, and a flicker of his old dream. The chefs stared at him, some with doubt, some with a tiny spark of hope. For a moment, there was a hush. Then, a small giggle broke the silence, followed by another, and soon, the kitchen was filled with snickers and outright laughter. "You, David?" One chef snorted, wiping tears of amusement from his eyes. "You're the dishwasher. What could you possibly cook?" Chef Anya, who had looked hopeful for a second, now frowned, her lips twisting into a sneer. "Really, David? We're talking about a 5-star banquet, not a backyard barbecue. Your wife's special recipe won't cut it. You're just kitchen help." Her voice was colder than ever, full of sharp doubt. The other chefs nodded, agreeing with her. They looked at David as if he had told a silly joke, not offered a serious solution. How could someone who only washed dishes suddenly become a chef, especially when their very important reputations were on the line? David felt his cheeks grow warm, but he held his ground. The laughter and mocking words stung, but the memory of Lily's warm smile kept him strong. The laughter slowly died down as the restaurant owner, a stern man named Mr. Du Bois, appeared. He had heard the shouts and seen the ruined dish. With a sigh, he looked at David, then at the clock. There was no other choice. "Let him try," Mr. Du Bois said, his voice tired. "It's our only hope." Chef Anya still looked doubtful, but she stepped aside. David didn't waste a second. He moved with a speed and grace that surprised everyone. He grabbed pots and pans, not the dirty ones he usually handled, but the clean, shining ones meant for cooking. His hands, which moments ago were scrubbing, now chopped vegetables with practiced ease. Onions, carrots, potatoes, they flew under his knife, cut perfectly. He found spices, not just grabbing any, but picking them with care, smelling them first. His eyes, usually quiet and a little sad, now sparkled with focus. He wasn't the dishwasher anymore. He was a man deeply connected to his craft, guided by a loving memory. The kitchen, once filled with panic and mockery, now watched him in silence, a strange mix of wonder and disbelief on their faces. David poured a little oil into a hot pan, and the sizzle sounded like a welcome song. He added the chopped vegetables, and a delicious smell instantly filled the air. It wasn't the strong, fancy smells usually found in the Gilded Spoon. This was different. It was warm, inviting, and full of home. It was Lily's special stew. As the ingredients danced in the pan, David felt Lily's presence beside him. He remembered her humming softly as she stirred a pot, her eyes twinkling with joy. He could almost hear her gentle advice. "A pinch more salt, David, for the taste of the sea." Or, "Don't rush the onions, let them sweeten slowly." Each scent, each sound brought back happy times. He remembered laughing together in their small kitchen, sharing secrets over a bubbling pot. The worries of the restaurant, the sneering chefs, all faded away. For these few precious moments, David was simply cooking for Lily, making a dish filled with love and happy memories. The rich aroma spread, slowly changing the mood in the tense kitchen. As the rich, homey smell of Lily's stew filled the air. The busy chefs found themselves drawn closer. Their initial sneers slowly faded, replaced by curious stares. They watched David move, not like a clumsy dishwasher, but like a true artist. His hands stirred with a confident grace, his eyes knew exactly when to add the next ingredient, and his nose twitched, tasting the air for the perfect balance. Chef Anya, who had stood furthest back, found herself stepping forward, her sharp eyes fixed on David. She saw the way he handled the fresh herbs, the gentle care he took with each spoonful. It wasn't just cooking, it was something more. It was a dance, a story, a memory being brought to life. Her frown softened. The coldness in her eyes began to melt away, replaced by a flicker of surprise, then respect. She had seen many chefs, but none cooked with such quiet passion, such a deep connection to their food. She started to see David not as just kitchen help, but as someone with a hidden talent, a quiet fire she had never noticed before. With a final stir and a sprinkle of fresh parsley, David stepped back. Lily's special stew was ready. It sat in a large pot, a rich, inviting brown, with tender pieces of meat and colorful vegetables peeking out. Steam rose gently, carrying a smell so wonderful it made your stomach rumble. It looked simple, not fancy like the usual dishes at the Gilded Spoon, but it had a warmth and honesty that was truly beautiful. The chefs, including a wide-eyed chef Anya, gathered around, silent and awestruck. The aroma was indeed better than anything they had smelled all night. Mr. Dubois, the owner, cleared his throat. "Well, David," he said, a hint of surprise in his voice. "It looks promising." Carefully, David began to scoop the stew into elegant serving bowls. Each spoonful was placed with care, a small piece of Lily's love being shared. Then, the waiters, still a bit confused but following orders, took the bowls from David's steady hands and carried them out to the waiting, important guests in the dining room. David watched them go, a mix of hope and worry fluttering in his chest. A few tense minutes passed. David stood by the kitchen door, straining to hear. Then, a murmur started from the dining room, growing louder and louder. It wasn't angry shouts, it was happy sounds. Gasps of delight, pleased hums, and excited chatter filled the air. Soon, a waiter rushed back into the kitchen, his eyes wide. "They love it," he whispered, almost shouting. "The guests are saying it's the best dish they've ever tasted." Another waiter followed, beaming. "They want to know who made it. They say it's warm, comforting, and utterly perfect." The words echoed through the kitchen. The chefs, who had been holding their breath, let out a collective sigh of relief. Chef Anya's jaw dropped. Mr. Dubois, the owner, actually smiled, a rare sight. The crisis was over. The banquet, which had been on the edge of disaster, was not just saved, but made truly special. David felt a wave of warmth spread through him, not just from the heat of the kitchen, but from a deep, quiet joy. Lily's recipe had worked its magic. Chef Anya stood frozen, her usually proud and knowing face completely blank with shock. She heard the shouts of joy from the dining room, the praise for the best dish ever, and she could hardly believe her ears. David, the quiet dishwasher she had often looked down on, had created this masterpiece. She watched him, still standing by the kitchen door, a humble smile playing on his lips. It was impossible. She, a chef who had trained in the finest schools and worked in the most famous restaurants, had almost caused a disaster. Yet, David, who only washed dishes, had calmly stepped in and cooked a dish that charmed everyone. The rich aroma of the stew still hung in the air, a delicious proof of his skill. Anya felt a strange mix of feelings: surprise, a little bit of shame for her past unkindness, and a deep, unwilling respect. How could she have been so wrong about him? He wasn't just kitchen help. He was a true cook with a magic she couldn't explain. The restaurant owner, Mr. Dubois, walked into the kitchen, his face now beaming. He clapped David on the shoulder. "David, that was truly amazing. The guests are asking who made this wonderful dish." David, still a little shy, cleared his throat. "It's a recipe from my wife, Lily," he said, his voice soft but clear. He looked around at the curious faces of the chefs, especially at Chef Anya, whose eyes were fixed on him. Lily loved to cook more than anyone I knew. She believed that the best food wasn't just about fancy ingredients, but about putting love into every single bite. He shared a sweet story about how Lily would always sing while she cooked, and how her secret ingredient was always a happy heart. He spoke of her joy, her kindness, and how her simple dishes always tasted like pure sunshine. The kitchen, usually so loud, became very quiet. Everyone listened, captivated by David's words. It wasn't just a story about food. It was a story about love, loss, and the special magic a person can leave behind. Chef Anya stood speechless, her heart touched by David's heartfelt tale. Chef Anya stood very still, her beautiful face showing no anger now, only a soft, thoughtful look. David's story about Lily, about love being the secret ingredient, had touched her deeply. It wasn't just the delicious taste of the stew or the surprising skill David showed. It was the feeling behind it, a feeling she, with all her fancy training, had sometimes forgotten. She thought back to all the times she had sneered at David, called him just kitchen help, and laughed at his quiet presence. A wave of shame washed over her. How could she have been so blind? She had judged him by his job title, not by the true talent and warm heart that lay hidden beneath his simple apron. David wasn't just a dishwasher. He was a chef with a deep love for food, a love passed down from his wife. He had saved the banquet with a dish that spoke of home and heart, something her own elaborate recipes sometimes lacked. Anya realized her mistake, a big mistake. She had learned a lesson not from a cookbook, but from the quiet strength of a dishwasher dad. With a deep breath, Chef Anya walked over to David. Her usual proud stance was softened, and her eyes, usually so sharp, held a new, gentle look. "David," she began, her voice a little shaky, I am truly sorry." David looked up, surprised. He wasn't used to hearing soft words from her, especially not an apology. "I was wrong," Anya continued, looking directly into his eyes. "I judged you unfairly. I only saw your job, not your talent, not your heart. Your wife's recipe and your story. It was beautiful. You are not just kitchen help, David. You are a truly gifted chef and a good man." Her words were honest, coming from a place of true regret. David felt a warmth spread through him, a different kind of warmth than Lily's stew, but just as comforting. It was the warmth of being seen, truly seen, for who he was. For the first time, Chef Anya saw past his apron and into the soul of a passionate cook and a loving father. As Chef Anya spoke her honest apology, a feeling of deep happiness bloomed in David's chest. It wasn't just about saving the banquet or getting praise from the owner. It was about something much bigger. He had honored Lily, her spirit, her love for cooking, her belief that food should come from the heart. All of it had shone brightly tonight. A warm, quiet pride filled him. For so long, he had hidden his passion, letting the labels of dishwasher and kitchen help define him. But tonight, he had shown everyone, especially himself, his true talent. He saw the respect in the other chef's eyes, the genuine admiration. The laughter and sneers were gone, replaced by a new understanding. He knew Lily would have been so proud, her smile even brighter than the sun. He stood a little taller, his heart full, knowing he had not only saved a fancy dinner, but had also brought Lily's special magic back to life. As the happy buzz from the dining room continued, Mr. Du Bois, the owner, stepped forward again, his smile even wider. He looked at David with newfound respect. "David," he said, his voice firm and clear, "what you did tonight, it was more than just saving a banquet. It was truly special." He paused, then continued, "I've been looking for someone with real heart in their cooking, someone who can bring warmth and joy to our dishes. It's clear you have that." Mr. Du Bois then made an offer that made David's heart leap. "I want to offer you a chance, David, not as a dishwasher, but to cook in this kitchen, to share your talent. Maybe, if things go well, even as a real chef." David's eyes widened. A chance to cook again? To be a real chef? It was a dream he had buried deep, a dream he thought was lost forever. He looked at Chef Anya, who nodded, a genuine smile on her face. The other chefs murmured their agreement. It felt like a door, long closed, had suddenly swung wide open, letting in a bright, hopeful light. David stood there, the weight of Mr. Du Bois's words sinking in, filling him with a warmth that spread through his whole body. A chance to cook again, truly cook, felt like a gift from Lily herself. He thought of her bright smile, her apron dusted with flour, and the way her eyes would light up when she talked about a new recipe. Her love for food, a love she shared so freely, had been his first teacher. His own passion for cooking, which he had kept hidden like a tiny ember for so long, now flared into a gentle flame. It wasn't just a job offer. It was a promise of a new future, a future where he could honor Lily's memory every day through the food he made. He imagined his son, growing up to see his dad, not just as a dishwasher, but as a chef, a creator, someone who made people happy with his hands and his heart. A new path stretched out before him, clear and bright, full of hope and the delicious promise of cooking with love. Chef Anya watched David, her heart a little lighter, her mind full of new thoughts. The stern lines around her mouth were gone, replaced by a soft, respectful curve. She saw his quiet strength, his humble smile, and the deep love he carried for his family and for food. It was more than just his cooking. It was the story of his life, a story of love and loss that truly showed her who he was. She realized that sometimes the greatest talents are not found in the brightest spotlights or in the loudest voices. They are sometimes found in the quiet corners, in the hands that work tirelessly, and in the hearts that hold precious memories. David, the dishwasher, was a person of unexpected depth and skill. Anya looked at him with respect, yes, but also with a touch of wonder. She knew now that the Gilded Spoon had been lucky to have him all along, and she was excited to see what other amazing dishes he and Lily's memory would bring to their kitchen. She had learned a lesson that night, a lesson about looking deeper beyond what meets the eye.